What is up, guys? Twitchy Tangle here. I've been putting a little bit of time into Code Veronica here lately. I think about 50 hours at this point, and having got that coveted A rank and working on the battle mode extra game mode, I wanted to discuss the issues I have with Code Veronica that I hope to see change in the eventual remake. And listen, guys, we know it's coming. It's just a matter of when. And the fact that a director on the Death Island movie acknowledged the pairing of Chris and Claire makes me think that remake's coming a lot sooner rather than later, which is exciting for Code Veronica fans. But this video is me critiquing the issues I have with the original Code Veronica. I know that's heresy to some. What's even more heresy is that I think it's the better of the classics, actually better than 1, 2, and 3. And I know that'll anger a lot of people, but that's just how I feel about it now, having put in a lot of time into it, almost, like I said, 50 hours. But today's video is I want to discuss the two things I hope to see change in a Code Veronica remake. One of the core tenets of survival horror, as well as Resident Evil in general, is backtracking from Resident Evil 1 to its remake, to Resident Evil 2 original, to its remake, to all the way to Village, excluding 5 and 6, and a little bit in 4. Backtracking is at its core. It's what makes the games function. You go through an area, you pick up key items, maybe come back to that area again, new enemies have spawned, possibly a new item, more ammo to pick up, so on and so forth. It's the nature of the beast. But I can't deny that what stops me from really appreciating and loving Code Veronica even more is the backtracking. Feels like it's to its detriment. It feels like a slog just to go through the game, come back to the same area more than 2 or 3 times, having to get another key item, pick up ammo, so on and so forth. That's just how it goes. But I can't deny that what really stops me from really appreciating this game and loving it even more is the backtracking. It feels way too excessive. There's moments where you have to pick up a key item, then go through that same area again with a new key item to get to a different area, and it's just the constant back and forth that stops me from really wanting to play this game even more. And I think that's bad because, like I said, I think it's the better of the classic RE games, but I can't deny that I have issues with it. There's one instance where you have to go all the way back to where you started at the beginning of the game to give Rodrigo his medicine. If you don't, you can't get the A rank, and arguably the A rank is probably the hardest of any Resident Evil title. Even though I run into some few issues with Professional and RE4, I didn't think it was as difficult as Code Veronica. I think Code Veronica is arguably the hardest game of the Resident Evil franchise. You only get one save, and that's at a halfway point. You only can use healing items such as herbs. You can't use first aid spray, and you have to save Rodrigo, and you can't die. And that's difficult. Capcom make Resident Evil games difficult again, but the backtracking kills a lot of that desire to go through and play it again, because I feel like the backtracking is just not done really well. Say you go through an area and you not paying attention to your resource gathering, and there's a key item. Well, you have 1 or 2 options to get that key item. You either reach some of your precious resources that are finite as is, or you go back to an item box that could be 5 or so minutes there and 5 or so minutes back, cutting into your time to complete the game. And that sucks. I think that's probably my issue as well, is there's not a lot of item boxes, and where they are at is spaced out throughout the game, where you constantly have to make sure you're not over getting items. You're constantly having to manage your resources, which I would argue does better than most Resident Evil games today. The way you have to manage your resources, make sure you have enough ammo, make sure you have enough healing items, as well as make sure you have the space, and I think it does it well. But I can't deny, mixture that in with the really poor backtracking, and it's just a recipe for disaster. And it's one of those things I hope does change in the eventual remake, because I think it desperately needs it. I'm not saying completely destroy it to the ground, but I think if they tweak the backtracking where key items are close enough to item boxes where it's not that big of a deal to go to an item box and place items and then go back and pick up that key item. There's also an instance where if you play as Claire and get poisoned by Nosferatu, well, when you go to save her as Chris, you also have to backtrack through areas to get to the serum to save her. So there's a lot of it's really at its core, that's what Code Veronica is backtracking, and I do hope it changes in some capacity. No, I'm not saying completely get rid of it entirely, but I think what stops a lot of people from really enjoying this game is the backtracking, and stops them from wanting to play it, because it can get overwhelming. I think first time I played it, I think my first time playing through the game was like 17 hours, and then after that it was 5, it was 4.5, it was 4. I still died, but I kept playing. I never got the A rank till recently. So there's a lot that I think stops people from really enjoying this game, and I think it's one of the best classics, if not the best classic. So if they can sort of tweak the backtracking in some way in the remake, I'm all for it, because I think it, like I said earlier, I think the backtracking really is to its detriment. I think it ruins the experience for me, stopping it from me really enjoying this game. But that's just how I feel about it. You could have a different opinion. You might think the backtracking's fine and that I'm just a scrub casual. But after having put about almost 51 hours into this game, it's just something I feel strongly about, and I hope Capcom does change it in some capacity. Though, to be fair, I do hope it keeps most of its identity, which I would argue that the backtracking is part of Code Veronica's identity, because you got to be good with your time management, making sure you keep enough room in your inventory to pick up key items. So at its core, that's what it is, but I can't deny that I do have issues with it, and I hope it gets changed in some capacity in the eventual remake. That being said, I feel like we've discussed enough about backtracking, and I want to talk about the other big issue I have, the big green giant in the room that is Mutated Steve. So let's discuss that, shall we? Having put enough time in this game as I have no issues with Steve. I know that's heresy for some, because everybody hates Steve. But just listen to me. I've put about 50 hours in this game. If I were Steve, his age, going through what he had to go through, lose his mom, having to put down his dad, I'd be an annoying little shithead too. Not gonna lie, I'd be just like Steve, and you can't say you wouldn't. But while I don't mind regular Steve, I have an extreme hateful desire for Mutated Steve. I have lost every A-rank run I have because of Steve. Either I couldn't execute the Steve dodge, which I think I've executed out of my several 5 or 6 runs twice, or I don't react quick enough, even though I have the heals, and by the time I'm getting close to the end of that little area, he kills me instantly. His hitbox, his damage. I hate Mutated Steve. He is literally the backtracking I can deal with, but I think arguably Mutated Steve is the worst part of this game. Like, if you don't react fast enough, you're dead. If you don't execute the Steve dodge, you're dead. But I finally did it, and I thought, man, Steve is not a bad character, but Mutated Steve can kick rocks. And honestly, he's probably the one thing I'd love to see change in some capacity. I know what I'm about to say is heresy. It is heretic behavior, and I belong on a cross. But bear with me just for a second. What if we expand Claire's section at the end of the game, and she's uncovering the secrets of Umbrella and the Ashford twins and what really went on here at the base and the island, and she comes across Steve, and you now have to hide from Steve. He becomes like a stalker enemy, like Nemesis, like Lady D. I can't even say her name, not even gonna attempt it. Mr. X, U3, because he was kind of a stalker enemy in RE4 Remake, or Separate Ways. You know, make it happen, Capcom. Make Mutated Steve, a stalker enemy, and you have to hide from him. Claire, of course, is not going to use weapons against him because he's already in enough pain, so all you can do is hide from Steve and get away from him. Well, here's the big change from the original. Claire runs into Alexia, or Alexis, whatever her name is. Chris did some damage to her, but not enough to push her into her next stage of her transformation. So Alexis wants to get revenge on Chris and kill his sister. Steve runs into them as Alexis is about to kill Claire. He finally comes to his senses. There's a big drawn out fight where Steve does a fatal blow on Alexia that causes her to transform into the monstrosity that Chris would face. He's mortally wounded. Claire cries over him. Chris finds him. Claire gives him the key item. He starts a self-destruct sequence. Bing, bang, boom. Chris kills Alexia. Chris and Wesker fight and duke it out. But here's the big twist. We are fast forward several years later to Lost in Nightmares, the moment where Albert and Spencer are having the conversation where Albert's like the right to be a god, and he kills Spencer, and he's like, it belongs to me, and that's where it cuts. And that would eventually, that's where the Resident Evil 5 remake starts, is with Chris and Jill investigating Spencer's mansion. I think that would be a great way to end the Code Veronica remake. It'll lead us into the Resident Evil 5 remake and have a great build up to it. That's what I think. Of course, that's not what's gonna happen. You already know that we're going to get Resident Evil 5 remake next, because Resident Evil 4 Separate Ways sets it up that way. But imagine if that's how they do it. We get Code Veronica after the sequel of 9, and then we get a Resident Evil 5 remake, sort of a trailer, so to speak, that leads into Lost in Nightmares, and that's actually how Resident Evil 5 remake starts off. I think it'd be a great way, but also I think making Steve a Stalker enemy really expands upon that section a lot more, because, you know, remakes always do bigger and better stuff, and I can't deny that would be a whole other ballgame to make Steve that sort of Stalker enemy, that enemy we have to run from and hide from for a bit, and all culminating in Mutated Steve fighting Alexia and all that. And I think that would be a great way to finish out Steve's character. I feel like we talked about a good bit today, so let's finish out this video. So I feel like the two things we discussed today, a lot of people can agree with, that they're just not fans of. Maybe you came to this video with a better understanding about how some people feel or how I feel. I just think, if I'm being wholeheartedly honest, that the backtracking is just rough. I think a remake of it could really fine-tune it and tweak it in a way that is enjoyable for everyone, and I think Mutated Steve's hitbox and damage is utter bullshit. Let's make him a Stalker enemy. And again, heresy for some, a good idea for others, but I think there's a way of going about it that would make a lot of sense. We made it to the end of the video, guys. I want to hear from y'all. I want to hear what you think. Do you have these criticisms? Do you have different criticisms of Code Veronica? Please let me know down below. And if you don't have criticisms of Code Veronica, tell me the criticisms you have of other Resident Evil titles, because I'd love to hear from you guys. Yeah, this is a safe space. We're allowed to criticize things we love. I always talk about how much I love Resident Evil 1 HD Remake. If you have criticisms about that Resident Evil, let me know. I'm willing to understand and hear it. But we've come to the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did enjoy it, leaving a like helps your boy out, get into the algorithm. And if you're feeling super generous, maybe consider subscribing and turning on notification bells, because that helps your boy know that what he's doing is good and right. And honestly, the fact that if you guys love this video, that is awesome. But that being said, this is the end of the video. I love you all. I'll see you all in the next one. Take it easy.